Okay, this is 250, week 5, part 9. This is probably going to be the last one for the day. Normally I would do a 10th one, but I think I'm going to put some clips from The Matrix and some other things for you to take a look at. So let's just see if we can get to Baudrillard's main point. That second paragraph is fucking impossible, but let's try it again because I think there's something valuable in there. He says, abstraction today is no longer that of the map, the double, the mirror, or the concept. Those were the kinds of copying of reality that Plato and Pope are talking about. He says today, it's more complicated than it was back in the old days. He says simulation is no longer that of a territory, a referential being or substance. See, referential means refers back to. So if art is a copy of reality, then art refers back to reality. Just like the map refers to the territory, that's the actual place, or an idea refers to a substance. It is the generation by models of a real without origin or reality, a hyper-real. So he's concerned about the generation of a real. This is like another reality without origin or reality, meaning you can generate copies or things like copies that no longer refer to anything. Because for Pope and Plato, art is a copy of reality. For Oscar Wilde, art is an escape. But it's easy to tell the difference between a movie and real life. But Baudrillard's concerned about what if you could create a copy of something that was so realistic you didn't know that it wasn't real at all. By the way, if you remember The Matrix, I don't know how well you remember The Matrix, but if you remember The Matrix, the point of there's a bad guy in The Matrix, a guy named Cypher. And Cypher, he, like Neo, he also found out that his whole life was a simulation. And then he woke up in this terrible sci-fi universe where they're battling robots and they have to eat this terrible paste. And it's terrible. They dress in shitty clothes and it's no fun. And the bad guy in that movie, Cypher, is like, you know what? I know that this shit isn't real. I would actually rather be in the fake world. Can you please put me back in the fake world? He says, I want to go to, they're eating in a restaurant, but it's like a simulation robot restaurant. It's not real food. They're just telling his brain. It's like they're telling his brain, you're eating a steak now, but he's not. And so he's plugged into a machine and the machine's making him think he's eating steak. He says, I'd actually rather have the fake. He says, I know the steak isn't real, but it feels real, it tastes real, and I'd rather have this. Thank you very much. So what Baudrillard's concerned is people like Cypher. But what happens when your copies are so realistic that they replace reality? Oscar Wilde said, art is an escape, but you knew it was art. Like, you go to a movie theater, and that's a way to escape, but you know movies aren't real. But what if it was like a virtual simulation, and you could plug your brain and live in another world that felt exactly as real as this world? That is Baudrillard's concern. He's very worried about the danger of this. He calls it a hyper-real because it's like it's a real above. Hyper means above, so it's real above the real. But what if that real goes away? Like, imagine again, you make a map and then you destroy the territory. He says the territory no longer precedes the map nor survives it. So you think first you have a place and then you have a map of the place. But he says now it's backwards. Now the map precedes the territory, the procession of simulacra. So he says, like, what if you made a map of a place that didn't exist and it was so realistic you thought that was a real place and it wasn't? Here's another example. What if someone cloned you and then killed you? See the problem? A lot of your relatives wouldn't even notice the goddamn difference. You'd notice the difference. You'd be dead. But they wouldn't be able to tell. Because someone made a copy of you that's so realistic, that imagine someone making a copy of you and then you die, but the copy lives on. That's a fucked up thing to think about. And there's actually a TV show. Actually, I'm not going to say the name of the TV show because I don't want to spoil the end of it. But there's a TV show that ends just like that, and it made me crazy. But another one is, what if someone could grow a person in a lab? Oh, you know what? Blade Runner. In Blade Runner, there are robots, but they don't know they're robots. They think they're people. They look like people, they talk like people, they act like people, and then at the end of the movie, they're like, oh shit, I'm a robot the whole time, I didn't even know. Because they're not real people, they're like fake versions of people. All right, cool. Let's take a look at this. So he says, it is the map that engenders the territory, and if we were to revive the fable today, it would be the territory whose shreds are slowly rotting across the map. It is the real, not the map, whose vestiges subsist here and there in the deserts which are no longer those of the empire but our own. the desert of the real itself. So his concern is that what if our copies get so good and so beautiful and so realistic and so perfect that we actually lose reality, and now we're living in a fake world all the time. I'll give you another example. Actually, this one comes from my students. It's a really good one. Imagine, you guys have had Starburst, right? One of my favorite candies, by the way. Starburst, I usually don't like to tell students that Starburst is my favorite, because then sometimes I get kissed-ass students that will bring me Starburst and it makes me feel uncomfortable. But now we're online and no one's going to send me a Starburst, so it's cool. So imagine for a second that Starburst comes in fruit flavors, right? So there's like an orange one, and there's a cherry one, there's a lemon one, right? Easy. Imagine for a second, though, that all the lemons in the world got destroyed by a bug in the crop. So that the only way you could know what lemon tasted like was by eating a lemon Starburst. What if there were no more cherries in the world, and the only way you could know what a cherry tasted like was by eating a cherry Starburst? Now, the funny thing is what candy flavors taste like. You've had oranges, and you've had orange candy. You've had lemons, and you've had lemon candy. There is a relationship between the two. But it's not quite the same, is it? Imagine what would happen if there were no more fruit, just candy. What if the only thing you knew about orange was that it was from orange Gatorade? Well, actually, here's an example a lot of people know. It's the difference between, first of all, take orange Gatorade, and then take like Tropicana orange juice, and then take a fucking orange and squeeze it and drink the 3 drinks. They're theoretically all 3 of them orange flavored, but they're quite different. For a lot of people, they know, it's obvious to them. This is easy. They know the difference. Orange Gatorade is not the same thing as Tropicana orange juice. Tropicana orange juice is real orange juice. But then when you actually drink fresh squeezed orange juice, you realize that Tropicana orange juice, which is made from concentrate, I think, a lot of the time, but it doesn't taste as good. As a fresh squeezed orange juice is so much better than Tropicana orange juice, and Tropicana orange juice is so much better than Gatorade. But what's funny is that most people will be able to tell you Tropicana orange juice is real and Gatorade is fake, but a lot of them don't understand that like fresh squeezed orange juice from like organic oranges is so much better than Tropicana, and it's more real. There's something, if you think Gatorade is fake, Tropicana is kind of fake when you compare it to drinking juice out of an orange you picked off a fucking tree. My favorite example of this is honey. When you go to the store to buy honey, you get honey in like a little container that's shaped like a bear. That's kind of bullshit. That's not really honey. It's some of it is honey, but it's a mix of honey and corn syrup. And corn syrup is basically just sugar. It's made from corn, but it's sugar. So when you go get honey in the store for like, $6 for a little bear full of honey or whatever, it's sort of like honey, but it's like honey mixed with sugar. And I was eating with a student, and I had fancy fucking honey. Go to the farmer's market, and in Brooklyn, the farmer's market is right here. But you go to the farmer's market in Brooklyn, and you get honey, and it's real honey. Like, they actually got it out of a fucking beehive, and they didn't add any corn syrup sugar to it. And it's like when you eat this stuff, and it's expensive. This is the problem. All of a sudden, instead of $6, it's like $15, $20, $22. But when you eat it, it's like, oh my God, it's like I've never had honey before in my life. This is what Baudrillard's concerned about. We live in a world where reality is already disappearing. People think they know what honey is, but they don't. People think they know what orange juice is, but they don't. Because we've replaced it with simulacra. We've replaced it with fakes, and we've lost track of actual reality, and that's incredibly dangerous. I'm going to put some Matrix videos down here for you guys to watch, and I don't know what else. Maybe some Greek statues in color. We'll see what I can find. And anyway, thanks for joining me, and I will see you guys next week. That's the end of week 5. I love you all, and I hope you're surviving online learning.